Lovely, here it is, I found it. It's right next to my copy of the Anarchist's Cookbook. Right. It's time for spooky. Voxisproductions presents a dramatic reading coming from Scary Stories to Tingle Your Butt, 7 Tales of Gay Terror comes Vampire Night Bus Pounds My Butt. Let's begin. Sit comfortably. Are you all comfortable in your chair? Buttocks clenched with anticipation? Then let us begin this truly gay Chuck Tingle experience. Public transportation can be a real pain in the ass, especially when you're used to getting around with your very own car and on your very own schedule. Even though the traffic in Los Angeles is mind-numbingly bad, there is a certain zen-like quality to sitting behind the wheel and working your way through an hour-long podcast in your own bumper-to-bumper cage on wheels. It's a great place to think, or even just sing loudly, drumming your hands on the dashboard with the pleasant assurance that no one else will ever hear you. I was one of those happy commuters until just last week, when I was sideswiped off the road by a truck and trailer in a hit-and-run that apparently doesn't mean much to the Los Angeles Police Department. Now I'm just waiting for my insurance company to come through with some sort of compensation, and in the meantime, I've been taking the bus to and from work. One thing's for sure about public transportation. You meet a lot of strange people when you're hitting the evening routes. The City of Angels is already full of weirdos, but the dark side of this town really starts to show itself as soon as the sun finally disappears beneath the shimmering blue ocean, casting the landscape in an endless shadow of strangeness until morning. It was on one of these nights that I first heard about the Vlad. I had just boarded and taken my seat near the back of the bus when another rider climbed aboard and shuffled over next to me. He was strange and old, seemingly homeless, but not as dirty as you would expect, just odd in his mannerisms. "Nice night," the man says, sitting down a few rows in front of me on the vacant bus, and then spinning around to talk back over the seat. "Yes, it is," I respond, trying not to do anything that would make him any more interested in me than he already is, yet still having the decency to be polite and answer the man's question. I continue to stare out from the bus window as the city rumbles by us on the other side of the glass. "You've been riding this line a lot, huh?" continues the man, curiously. "I've seen you." At this point, I finally look at the guy and make eye contact, taking him in completely. He seems harmless enough, just strange. "Yeah, I thought I recognized you," I tell the man. Suddenly, the guy stands up and moves 2 rows back towards me, immediately sitting down in the seat next to mine on an almost completely empty bus. I'm instantly uncomfortable. "I'm gonna tell you this because I like you," the man says. "Make sure you double-check the bus you're getting on at this stop." "Oh yeah?" I ask, my curiosity piqued, despite the blatant invasion of my personal space. The strange man nods. This is Vlad's route. If you're not careful, you might end up turned into a bat, or even stone-cold dead. Despite my best efforts, a mischievous grin crosses my face. I'd given him the benefit of the doubt at first, but now it has become painfully clear that, like most of the other disheveled-looking folks boarding the bus at this late hour, he is utterly insane. At least he's making my commute a little more entertaining than usual. Who's Vlad? I ask, playing along. Bus 13, the man replies, staring at me with a deep and feverish intensity. Vlad drives 13, I question. No, no. The man shakes his head. Vlad is bus 13. Suddenly I realize what this strange man is talking about. Most of the Los Angeles city's buses have assigned drivers, many of which I have recently come to know quite well, but others are driven by the sentient buses themselves. These living vehicles are rare, but not unheard of, and my scoffing at one could be seen by some as racially insensitive. Living buses have had to fight to get where they are today, and that struggle is nothing to make light of. Something still doesn't make sense, though. What do you mean turned into a bat? I continue my line of questioning. The man leans in, lowering his voice down to a hushed whisper. Bus 13 is a vampire. I scoff loudly, unable to help myself, as the mysterious man's absurd words cross my ears. Of course, he thinks the living night bus is a vampire. This is exactly the type of racially insensitive thinking that has kept these sentient vehicles in the position that they're in, working minimum wage jobs without any real way to pull themselves out of the lower class. Stories like this one may seem like nothing but a little harmless fun, but when you realize the subconscious place of misdirected fear that they are coming from, the whole idea starts to put a bad taste in your mouth. The mysterious man can see now that he's clearly lost me, and a look of great disappointment sweeps across his face. You don't believe me, huh? He asks. I shake my head. I'm sorry, no. I think it's very insensitive to talk about living buses that way. Our vehicle soon pulls over, and the strange man almost immediately stands up, heading for the door, and then climbing off onto the darkened street. As the bus pulls away, he takes one final glance back at me, his expression not one of anger or frustration, but sadness, as if he knows a terrible fate that waits for me just around the next corner of my life. I lean back into my seat and put on my headphones, anxious to get home. By the next night, I've completely forgotten about my bizarre warning from the evening before. My thoughts consumed instead by an aching frustration with my job and the fact that I had to work much later than I expected. Now my schedule has been completely turned upside down. The usual bus route home, a thing of the past. Instead, I've been thrust into a web of late-night transit maps that I don't completely understand, especially after my brain has been fried from a long day at the office. I arrive to my usual bus stop at this unusual time, scrolling through my phone's transit app in complete bewildered confusion. Nothing seems to make any sense, until it suddenly hits me. I've already missed the last bus home, but only a few minutes. Oh, fuck, I say out loud, thinking back to the offer that my co-worker had just made to drive me home. I had immediately turned him down out of sheer pride, wanting to show the world and myself that I can make it work, and back in this big, bad city without a car of my own. I'm immediately regretting that decision. The streets around me are completely empty, void of the daytime hustle and bustle that usually accompanies this part of town. I let out a long sigh as I realize that I'll have to call a cab, which means the trip home will probably cost me about half of the day's earnings at work. What a fucking disaster! I'm just about to press enter on my cell phone to call the nearest cabbie when I hear a low and familiar rumble in the distance. I look up immediately, a wave of relief washing over me as I see a lone night bus rumbling down the street. I'm thankful for his arrival until the bus gets close enough for me to make out the number flashing digitally across his forehead. 13. The bus pulls up in front of me and stops, the doors opening to reveal not a single living soul inside, not even a driver. Where are you headed? The bus asks in a thick Eastern European accent. I gulp hard. North Hollywood? You're in luck. The bus retorts. That's exactly where I'm headed. Well, what are the chances? I say aloud, almost to myself as I climb aboard. The warnings from the night before suddenly come flooding back over me as a long, cold chill runs down my spine. The bus begins to roll onwards as I take a seat next to the window, gazing out upon the darkened city streets that pass us by. As ridiculous as it is to believe in vampires, the bus himself had all of the features that you'd normally associate with such devilish creatures of the night. The accent was obvious, but the vehicle was also incredibly handsome in a dark and brooding kind of way, with huge dark eyes and a muscular chest, with abs just barely visible underneath his large metallic frame. My entire body is racked with nervous tension now as I sit in silence, my thoughts flooded with a fearsome cocktail of emotion. In my mind, I just keep repeating to myself over and over again that vampires are not real, trying in vain to calm down. It's no use. Suddenly the bus speaks up, causing me to jump abruptly in my seat. What are you doing out this late? Oh, me? I stammer. The phrase made even more awkward by the fact that there is nobody else on the bus with me. And they kept me for a really long time at work, yeah. That is most unfortunate, the vehicle responds, his voice deep and velvety. We sit in silence for a brief moment that somehow seems to stretch on forever and ever between us. You are nervous, the bus finally says, the statement ringing out like a question despite the fact that he never actually asked one. Yes, I say, my voice trembling now. Why? The bus asks. I think hard about how I want to answer, and then finally respond to his question with a question of my own. Do you have any day routes? The bus smirks. I spend my days asleep in the garage at my home. I only come out for the night shifts. Sure, I nod. But, don't you sometimes need a tune-up during the day or anything like that? The bus shakes his head. No, never. Interesting, I tell him, thinking hard about any other tests I could throw out there. Are there any church services on this route? It's a little late for that. The bus laughs. Why do you ask? In reality, I'm just wondering how often folks wearing crosses ride this bus, but I can't tell him that, so instead I offer a simple, just curious. You have some odd questions, the bus tells me. I nod, and then lean back into my seat, focusing once again on the darkened city that passes by out the window. It suddenly dawns on me that we are no longer headed towards my North Hollywood destination, instead making our way up into the hills, farther and farther away from the densely populated areas of Los Angeles. My heart immediately starts to pound hard in my chest. Where are we going? I ask. This isn't the way. I thought I'd take the scenic route, the bus tells me. If you'd like, I can turn around and get you there quicker, but I thought you might enjoy a nice drive with me. His words should come off as menacing, but instead there is a hint of something deeper and almost charming about his tone. I find myself intrigued by the vehicle's proposition and, dare I say, strangely aroused. It's fine, I tell him. Let's take the long way. I realize now that my cock is growing hard within my pants, unable to escape the strange charisma of this handsome city vehicle. It's an odd feeling, and at first I try to fight it, and as I recall the dread that had so fully consumed me just moments before. Regardless of how hard I try, though, my thoughts continue to... Regardless of how hard I try, though, my thoughts continue to return again and again to ones of decadent sexual attraction for this city vehicle. As the minutes tick by, we travel farther and farther away from the lights of Los Angeles, up and down the hill, and then out towards the edge of the deep valley. We are clearly no longer taking the long way home. But I don't mention it. There's a part of me that's utterly terrified, yes, but at this point there's really nothing that I can do aside from jumping from the bus while it moves and potentially hurting myself badly. Not only that, but the fear that simmers inside of me is kind of arousing in itself. I know you're not taking me back to my house, I finally tell the bus, my voice trembling. Where am I taking you, then? The city bus replies. I don't know, I say. Am I safe? Yes, of course. The bus tells me. You're my guest for the evening, and you will be treated as such, unless you'd like to go home now. I think about his offer for quite a while, and then finally respond with, No, take me wherever you want. We're almost there, says the bus. Moments later, an incredible castle comes into view, with massive turrets and a spooky, gothic exterior. It looks as though it's been pulled straight from the screen of an old black-and-white horror film. Yet, it's located just a short drive outside of Los Angeles. We pull in through the wrought iron gate and then cruise up to the front of the massive building, its enormous double doors towering above us. I step out of the bus and crane my neck to look up at the castle's incredible stonework. Welcome, the bus says, opening the door for me and revealing a giant entryway which is large enough to fit the bus as he slowly wheels inside and closes the door behind us. Your home is beautiful, I tell him, but you've invited me in without even introducing yourself. You know my name, the bus says in a powerful, deep tone. Vlad, I respond, a shiver consuming me as the word slips past my lips. Yes, the bus says. And you are? Rick, I tell him. The bus nods. Rick, you are my guest tonight at Castle of Vlad, where all of your darkest fantasies will come true. If anyone else would have said this to me, I would have laughed out loud at the innate cheesiness of the line, but something about this city bus is sincere, so passionate that I don't dare make a peep. I once considered myself a typical straight male, but at this point I'm utterly taken with the vehicle and his dark charms. Come with me, the bus says, continuing deeper into the house with a faint mechanical rumble. The stairs of the castle have been remodeled since whenever they were built, now replaced by a large stone ramp that are big enough for the vehicle to climb up and down with ease. I follow Vlad to the upper landing where he stops in front of a beautiful fireplace that's inlaid with all kinds of stonework, ghosts and goblins. There's a beautiful red velvet chair next to the fireplace that Vlad motions for me to sit in, and I don't hesitate. Almost immediately, the hearth erupts in a ball of glorious orange flame, lit spontaneously as if by some magical means. I can't help but gasp and pull away, but as the warmth begins to wash over me and the firelight shimmers across the stone walls, I settle in. I'm finally relaxed enough to ask this beautiful bus something I've been dying to know ever since he picked me up. Tell me, I start, eyeing up the Los Angeles city vehicle curiously. Are you a vampire? Vlad smiles, much wider now than any time previously, and reveals two massive fangs protruding from his upper gums. What do you think? Yes, I respond nervously. I quickly follow up. Are you going to kill me or turn me into a bat? There is an awkward pause, and then suddenly the large passenger vehicle bursts out laughing. No, I'm not going to kill you. Of course not. I let out a long sigh of relief. The blood-drinking vampires of the past are long gone, slowly brought to extinction by their insistence of such a particular and rare diet, the boss explains. I mean, I love blood, don't get me wrong. It's just hard to dine when you have to kill someone every time you're hungry. So, what do you drink now, I ask? Vlad cracks a knowing grin. Come. I was already hard before, but suddenly my arousal is kicked into overdrive. Have you ever been with a city bus? Vlad asks, rolling towards me slowly. Once, I tell him, in college. How about a vampire? He asks, now so close to me that I can feel the heat of his engine radiating against my aching body. Never, I tell the vampire. Suddenly, the arousal I feel for Vlad overtakes me completely. I tear off my shirt and then press myself against his warm bus body, kissing him hard. I want you, I tell the vampire vehicle breathlessly. I want to pleasure you, like you deserve to be pleasured. Then do it, says the boss with a cool confidence. Where's that fucking cock of yours? I demand to know. Vlad motions over his shoulder. Inside. There is a loud hiss as the doors open up, and I quickly climb on board, walking back through the rows and rows of seats until I find it, a massive dick that projects proudly from the back wall of the bus. Fuck, you're so big, I call out to him, wondering how I hadn't noticed this cock before. I know, says the vampire bus. I immediately drop down to my knees and get to work, taking his fat rod between my lips and then pumping my face up and down along Vlad's hard shaft. I can feel the bus shudder and tremble below me, clearly enjoying himself as I service him. After a while of this, I finally get up the courage to attempt a deep throat, taking a long breath and then pushing his cock as hard as I can against the back of my throat. Unfortunately, something deep within me just doesn't want to give away. And moments later, I come afrair with a loud gasp. Too much for you? The bus laughs. Never, I tell him, trying once again, but this time relaxing myself entirely. I push his dick lower and lower into me, his length sinking deep within my neck until finally it drifts past my gag reflex and hits bottom. My nose is now pressed hard against the metallic back wall of the vehicle, his balls hanging lightly against my chin while I hold him there. Vlad lets out a long, satisfied moan, savouring the sensation of being completely consumed. Finally, when I've just about run out of air completely, I pull back with a loud gasp and let the giant rod pop out of my mouth. A strand of saliva runs from the head of his shaft to my lips, connecting the two of us together. Your cock is so fucking beautiful, I gush. I've never been with another man or bus before, but I think I'm ready to take things even farther. I think you are too, Vlad says. I stand up and then quickly remove my pants, tossing them onto one of the seats as I spin around and back my bare, muscular ass up against the tip of his throbbing member. I tease the bus playfully, placing his huge dick right at the entrance of my butthole and allowing him to tease the rim. I play with Vlad like this for a while until finally, having mercy and pushing myself back onto his rod, which slips slowly inside of my butt. I let out an aching moan. My body is barely equipped to take his enormous size, but somehow I manage as my asshole stretches to its absolute limits. My entire being is flooded with a mixture of pain and pleasure, which transitions towards pure ecstasy with every pump that I take against Vlad's giant dick. How do you like that vampire bus cock? Vlad demands to know, impaling me perfectly with his rock-hard shaft. Do you love that huge public transportation dick up your tight little asshole? I love it, I tell him. I fucking love it. I'm hammering against his massive rod, hard now, slamming the back of the wall of the bus with everything I've got until suddenly the entire metallic frame around me starts to tremble and shake with an impending orgasm. Oh, my dark lord of the night! The bus begins to stammer as the fire roars next to us. Oh, my dark lord of the night! Oh, my dark lord of the fucking night! Each time, Vlad repeats the phrase, it grows a little louder, until suddenly he's howling at the top of his lungs. Seconds later, the bus is erupting within my asshole, his jizz blasting hard into me in a series of pulsing ejections. I push back against the length and hold Vlad's dick fully inserted within as it continues to twitch and spasm. There was so much milky sperm that seconds later it comes spilling out from the tightly packed edges of my asshole and runs down my muscular legs in thick, pearly streaks. Oh, fuck! I groan as I finally pull back, allowing Vlad's rod to slip out of me, followed by a tidal wave of spunk from my asshole. The mess of cum splatters down onto the bus floor below me. Now it's your turn, the vampire says. Feed me. I step out of the vehicle and walk around to the front as the fireplace continues to rage next to us. You want this cock? I demand to know. Feed me, the bus repeats. You really want this fucking load, huh? I continue, egging him on. Feed me, booms Vlad, his tone growing more and more impatient. What if I want you to beg me for it, I ask. Suddenly, the large velvet chair from across the room comes flying towards me, hitting me at the back of my knees and knocking me off my feet. I land in the sitting position on its soft cushion. I'm carried forward towards the bus until I'm pressed right up against his massive face, telekinetically held in place. The vampire vehicle opens his mouth and takes me inside, swallowing graciously as he immediately gets to work with a series of slow, deliberate pumps. I throw my head back and close my eyes, savoring every moment of the vampire's wet lips as they travel up and down my length, wrapped tightly and expertly. With every pulse, the bus grows faster, working me with an expert precision unlike anything I could ever imagined. His blowjob skills are more than any human could provide. Soon enough, my entire body is quaking with ecstasy, the orgasmic sensations flooding through me in a wave after looming wave. I clench my teeth, preparing for the intense sensation to hit, and when it finally does, I hiss loudly, my entire being overwhelmed with pleasure. I'm coming! I finally yell, my eyes rolling back into my head. I can feel my load shoot hard into Vlad's waiting mouth, and he swallows it immediately, sucking me down greedily, and then continuing to coax more of the seed out of me. Pumps of jizz erupt into the vampire's throat until finally I find myself completely dry, and I fall back into the velvet chair. The bus throwing himself into reverse and pulling away slowly. Ugh. That was fucking incredible, I tell the vampire. Oh, thank you. Vlad smiles. The pleasure was all mine. Oh, really though, I continue, laying it on thick. I didn't know what to expect when I first came up here to this castle, but I'm glad I trusted you. This was one of the best nights of my life. I suddenly crack a wry smile. Thanks for not turning me into a bat. Vlad grins back at me, his fangs glinting in the faint moonlight that streams through the windows above us. Of course, I wouldn't turn you into a bat. Suddenly, I start to feel a strange sensation wash over me, my body aching from head to toe in a strange and unfamiliar way. I look down at my hands and see that they are changing color, becoming grey and tough. What the fuck? I shout, trying to stand, but immediately falling to the floor. Vlad is cackling manically. I want to turn you into a bat, but I never said anything about turning you into a bus. I can feel my body morphing and changing, elongating itself rapidly into the shape of a public transportation vehicle. Nyang! I cry out, the sound of my voice transforming into a wild honk that echoes off the castle walls. The end. Oh, well, lost a couple of viewers there. 200 people gone. Right. I think it's time for a break, don't you?